A ding ding ding! Next up in the top 5 build series is everyone's favorite Bong Boi, the Wraith. The Wraith gets the lucky number 13 spot in the series as we're almost halfway through the series, as currently as I make this video, there's 27 killers in Dead by Daylight, with Sadaka Yamamura being the latest one that's out right now. And so yeah, with the Wraith, let's dive right into the builds. The first build I want to talk about is what I think is the Wraith's best generator defense build. The perks for this build are Call of Brine, Overcharge, Oppression, and Eruption, as they offer the Wraith a decent amount of generator control, regression, and information altogether. The first perk, Call of Brine, has the effect that whenever you go to kick a generator, for the next 60 seconds the generator will regress at 200% the normal rate, and it's also highlighted in yellow while it's active, and anytime a survivor goes to interact with that generator and hits a good skill check on it, it gives you a loud noise notification as well. The generator effect is pretty decent, and can easily remove a generator's progress, while the loud noise notifications are great to know when a survivor returns to work on that generator. Because the Wraith is stealthy, this perk is good on him as you can ambush survivors with the hidden information that Call of Brine gives you. Overcharge and Oppression, meanwhile, both apply skill checks to generators after kicking them. Overcharge applies to the generator you first kick, and Oppression applies it to 3 other random generators that trigger if survivors are currently working on it whenever Oppression is triggered. Otherwise, it begins to regress those affected generators if no one's working on them. Lastly, kicking all the generators manually marks them with both Call of Brine and Eruption simultaneously. This also highlights the generator like Call of Brine in yellow, but for each generator that you've marked with Eruption, whenever you go to put someone into the dying state, all affected generators will explode, losing 6% of its progress. And if a survivor is working on any of those affected generators when Eruption goes to trigger, they'll become incapacitated for the next 16 seconds, meaning they can't work on it until then. What makes this build in particular the Wraith's best is its wide range of add-ons that support this. There's the Windstorm add-ons that allow you to move from generator to generator faster by increasing your movement speed while you're invisible, and there's also the Shadow Dance add-ons that let you break generators faster than you would normally. And lastly, there's also the underrated All-Seeing Spirit add-on. This add-on reveals the generator's progress from a white to red coloration based on how much progress the generator has on it. This add-on gives you so much information while you're invisible. Knowing essentially which generators are being worked on at any given time is what fuels this build, and because the Wraith is able to get around the map more easily than other killers, he's able to capitalize on the information this add-on gives him. Especially at the start of the game, as this add-on acts like the perk Lethal Pursuer, because it gives you an idea of where the survivors spawn based on the generator's progress. And because the vast majority of time the survivors spawn next to generators, this add-on becomes so useful at the start of the trial. I used to really underrate this add-on, thinking it was awful, in favor of his other ultra rare add-on, the Cockcomb Clapper, but since they upped his movement speed with patch 4.6.0 to 150% movement speed, it's a really hidden gem now, and I'm really surprised I don't see this add-on being used more, which is weird. As for build number 2, it's an all-aura reading build, as information can be very important to high mobility killers, such as the Wraith whenever he's invisible. The perks for this build are Zanshin Tactics, I'm All Ears, Barbecue and Chili, and the Nurse's Calling. Like every killer, pallets and windows are the Wraith's weakness, as this power doesn't really help you too much in chase, except at mind-gameable loops. That's why Zanshin Tactics is here, as it reveals the aura of all pallets, breakable walls, and vaulting locations within 32 meters of your location, so this is especially helpful on indoor maps like Midwich in the game, where pallets can be quite plentiful in most situations. And as for I'm All Ears, it's mainly to help during the chase as it reveals the aura of the survivor within 48 meters of your location for up to 6 seconds. This is good for understanding a survivor's looping behavior to see if they continue chasing at the same loop and get the corner to see where you go, or leave the loop entirely. It's a really underrated perk in my opinion, especially on the Wraith. Meanwhile, Barbecue and Chili reveals the aura of all survivors when they're 40 meters away for 4 seconds when you hook a survivor, and that's the main reason it's included in the build. The stackable blood point bonus it gives is just a nice side effect to it. This is good for leaving survivors after you hook someone, so you can find your next target more easily. And because of the Wraith's increased movement speed while he's invisible, he can capitalize on the information better than most killers. Lastly, a Nurse's Calling lets you see the aura of all healing survivors if they're within 28 meters of your location. Being able to move around the map quickly and with no tear radius has certain advantages to it, such as survivors who are more willing to heal out in the open and just in general. Because they don't hear your tear radius, they don't know you're coming and just stop healing altogether. A lot of the Wraith's add-ons can really support this build, from increasing his movement speed to take advantage of Barbecue and Chili's aura reading, to going all in on the aura reading aspect with the All-Seeing Blood add-on. This add-on lets you see the auras of all survivors within 8 meters of your location while invisible, which is great on maps with line of sight blockers, and it pairs very well with I'm All Ears and Chase. There's also his Sloppy Butcher add-on, the Blind Warrior White, which makes survivors take longer to heal with the Mangled status effect, and regress their healing progress if it's interrupted with the Hemorrhage status effect. This adds value to a Nurse's Calling, and any combination of add-ons make this build one of his best altogether. This next build is all about chasing and breaking, and features the perks Bamboozle, Brutal Strength, Enduring, and Spirit Fury. Whenever you vault a window with Bamboozle, you do it 15% faster than normal, and that window is blocked for up to 16 seconds with only one window being blocked at a time. Brutal Strength, meanwhile, is here to deal with the pallets, as the perk allows you to break pallets, breakable walls, and kick generators up to 20% faster. These two perks on their own are pretty decent, but with the Wraith's unique Shadow Dance add-ons, he can break everything and vault windows in under a second, which is crazy cool. If you're lucky and you get survivors who camp pallets while you're invisible, you can fake uncloaking to where you almost uncloak entirely, but cancel it at the last minute, and sort of trick them into dropping the pallet prematurely. With this build and Shadow Dance, breaking the pallet in front of their face in less than a second can be really satisfying. Also, with this build, I like to give an honorable mention to the Serpent's Soot add-on. This add-on has the unique effect that whenever you go to finish breaking a pallet or a generator, you uncloak completely altogether. When you're uncloaked because of this add-on, you still get to keep your 1 second speed boost that you would get if you came out of uncloaking manually. And I'm really surprised I don't see this add-on being used more with the Shadow Dance add-ons, to be honest. I feel like if I included vaulting, it would be perfect and more widely used, but insta-vaulting into a speed boost sounds kind of nutty actually. What do y'all think about that? Would uncloaking into a speed boost after vaulting be too strong for the Wraith, especially for a brown add-on? Let me know down below in the comment section on your thoughts about that. Anyways, breaking all these pallets super fast powers up the next perk, which is Spirit Fury. After breaking 2 pallets, the next time you're stunned, it will instantly break the pallet. Enduring is also here to reduce the stun duration and allow you to almost instantaneously attack out of Spirit Fury's stun. It's also good for forcing down pallets if the survivors choose to be greeted before dropping it altogether. And for these reasons, you could combine Shadow Dance with the Blink series add-ons. These add-ons let you cloak faster, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Even though you can cloak yourself back into invisibility pretty quickly, it still makes a nice combination overall. So yeah, overall this build is pretty good, pretty fun, and pretty satisfying at times. This next build is focused on trying to scare the survivors and grab them off generators while they're repairing. The first 2 perks are Discordance and Gearhead. Discordance highlights a generator in yellow every 4 seconds with a loud noise notification when 2 or more survivors are working on the same generator together. With this perk alone, it gives you 2 opportunities to go for a gen grabs and can be very useful during the game to keep track of the survivors' locations altogether. Meanwhile, Gearhead is for the sporadic information during the game, as it activates when you go to hit a survivor. If any survivor hits a good skill check while repairing, their ore is revealed to you for up to 10 seconds while Gearhead is active. To make the gen grabs more successful, this build centers around the Cockcomb Clapper, the Wraith's ultra rare add-on that essentially makes his wailing bell completely silent whenever you go to cloak and uncloak. For your second add-on, you can actually use quite a few add-ons to increase your chances of getting gen grabs. You could pair it with his All-Seeing Spirit to see which generators are being worked on based on how much progress they have, or the All-Seeing Blood to see survivors' ores within 8 meters of your location. Or you can pair it with its most commonly used add-on, which is the Ghost Soot. This add-on suppresses your tear radius for 6 seconds after uncloaking, and hiding your red stain and keeping your tear radius suppressed can be really useful in trying to help support the build altogether. Also, increasing your movement speed with the Windstorm add-ons can prove to be effective as well, being able to go from place to place quicker than you would normally. The last 2 perks, meanwhile, focus on general information, and they are the wombo combo of Scourge Hook Pain Resonance and Floods of Rage. Pain Resonance acts as the build's slowdown perk by regressing the generator with the most amount of progress on it by 15% when we go to hook a survivor on one of the 4 Scourge Hooks around the map. It also gives us information on where the survivors are by causing them to scream and reveal their location to us whenever the generator explodes from Pain Resonance. This is generally useful and could lead to a gen grab if you're able to get to the generator before it's completed altogether, since it is the one with the most amount of progress on it. Otherwise, the survivors who screamed are going to be on their guard since they'll know you're probably on your way there because they did scream. And let's be honest, it's rare to see a killer not go and pressure a generator if they know survivors screamed on them because of Pain Resonance. Meanwhile, Floods of Rage reveals the ore of all other survivors when the person on the Scourge Hook is rescued for up to 7 seconds. Aura reading is never not useful, and if you see survivors working on generators, unless they have the perk Distortion, Fine Chill, or they're within range of Shadow Step, they're not going to know you're using this perk until after the game. It's also good for surprising survivors who are out in the open who think they're trying to be sneaky, but are unknowingly about to be caught off guard. And now that I think about it, uncloaking faster with the Swift Hunt add-ons may also be worthwhile with this build, especially if the survivors try to greed the generator and mistime their letting go of it to avoid getting gen grabbed altogether. And now for the last build, which is the Killer's Lore-based one. I'm just going to start off with the first perk, which is Oppression. Oppression activates whenever you go to kick a generator. Up to 3 other random generators are selected to begin regressing, and if a survivor is working on one of those 3 randomly selected generators, they'll face a difficult skill check in the process of it. I'm starting off with the perk this time because Philip Ojamo, aka the Wraith, grew up in war-torn Nigeria, and by a young age, the war had taken so much away from him. It had taken away his parents, and then his grandmother Abigail. They were taken away from him by killing crews as they're called. as they would essentially go around destroying and killing off entire villages, as we learn from Philip's memories in Tome 4 Conviction. Grandmother Abigail didn't want Philip growing up feeling hatred towards the people who had destroyed their lives, but instead she wanted him to feel a sense of justice, to right the wrong that had been done to them. When Abigail didn't return to their hiding spot from trying to rescue a child during the middle of a raid, Philip began thinking revenge was the right way to go. Philip, now alone in the world, would be temporarily rescued by his next guardian, Funanya. One night when Philip was supposed to stand guard with his father's bell to warn Funanya and the other survivors for the killing cruise, he would end up falling asleep due to sleep deprivation. The bell had protected him overnight, however, because when he woke, the other survivors were dead, and Philip would have to see the life drain away from Funanya as she had been left for dead by the killing crews. Funanya, with her last few breaths, forgave Philip, but he could not forgive the killing crews for what they had did to her and the other survivors. The next perk in the build is Grim Embrace, which causes all generators to be blocked for 40 seconds and reveal the aura of the obsession for 6 seconds after hooking every survivor at least once. Grim Embrace is the next perk, as Philip no longer wanted to bear witness or forgive the killing crews, but wanted to act to destroy them for the monsters they were. He followed their trails of blood from their victims and finally found a group of them sitting by the fire with supplies and vehicles. He saw a container of kerosene and knew exactly what he needed to do. When the crew fell asleep by their lit fire, Philip made sure they would all burn and disappear from the world. The next perk in the build is Eruption. Each generator cook is highlighted in yellow, and whenever survivors put into the dying state, all highlighted generators explode and regress by 6%. And any survivor working on one of those affected generators will scream and become incapacitated for up to 16 seconds. Eruption is here because all of Philip's life had been leading up to this moment. The fire had erupted and engulfed all of the killing crew members as Philip watched from a distance, knowing he was the cause of their pain and suffering. We wouldn't see this level of carnage and action from Philip until years later when he moved to America and was working at Autohaven Wreckers. Once again, Philip followed the blood he saw around him. He discovered that his boss Azeroth hired him more or less to be an executioner, because for every vehicle that he crushed with a compactor, there was always someone locked inside of it. Philip would erupt in anger for learning this news and would throw Azeroth into the very compactor he would use on his victims. With his strength, Philip pulled Azeroth's skull and spine out of the compactor that would later become his default weapon, Azeroth's axe. After this incident, Philip would end up disappearing, eventually to be taken by the entity altogether. The last perk of the build is Bloodhound, as following the blood around him both physically and mentally had changed his life forever. Bloodhound makes the pools of blood considerably brighter in the environment, and they stay visible for an extra 4 seconds. To share my final thoughts on the Wraith, he's had an interesting journey in-game. He was one of the 3 OG killers, and for the longest amount of time he was considered the worst, if not one of the worst killers in Dead by Daylight. The Wraith used to move much slower than he currently does while invisible, and he also didn't have the built-in speed boost after uncloaking like he does today. And he was also much more sensitive to being light burned with flashlights. He was so sensitive to the point that he used to have an entire series of add-ons devoted to increasing his resistance to being light burned altogether. At one point, one of his ultra rare add-ons granted him immunity to being light burned altogether. Right now, I think the Wraith is in a good spot in terms of his power and add-ons, in terms of both design and functionality. I will say though, his perks, specifically Predator and Bloodhound, could be modernized in some way, as it's much easier to track survivors nowadays from a more educated player base, and the maps look brighter than they did in previous years with all the graphical updates. Down below in the comments section, tell me what killer you would like to see in the next top 5 builds video. I am Listen3, and I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.